All right, and here's your official welcome to this month's webinar, 20 things you can do for your chapters. Super excited to be here with you all. I know the doors are still open. We're going to have some folks wander in. Find a seat and get yourself strapped in, because we've got a bit of a rapid fire webinar in which our intention is just to kind of lay out some ideas for you. Now, I'm going to ask you, as we get started and warmed up, to go ahead and put in chat, please, if what is one thing you're really hoping that you can do in 2023 that will have an impact for your chapters, whether you call them chapters, components, sections, affiliates, at arm's length groups that happen to share our name or our membership. I don't care what it is that you've got, you want to call them, but what is that one thing you're really looking to do in 2023? And let me tell you why I'm asking. Okay, really, I mean, part of it's is that we're asking you to help us, because if we know what you're looking to do, then we can do a better job in our content calendars, whether we're talking about webinars or idea swaps or the materials and resources we're putting out on our website. It gives us a better opportunity for us to support you. But here's the other thing, and this is not at all self-serving for us. You might just find somebody else on today's webinar who has done that very thing or is also thinking of doing it. And so I'm going to encourage you, if you find that, go ahead and reach out to that person. You can private chat them. You can do it in the general chat and book a coffee, virtual or in person, doesn't matter, but book a time to talk with them. You know, this is a community. And one of the reasons why, quite frankly, Billhighway and Mariner Management have been connecting and helping to do this is because we actually have a commitment to our chapters and our components. What's really exciting is this commitment is something that, at least for Mariner, for sure, we've been here 20 years. Woohoo! That's right. We are celebrating 20 years this year, 20 years of really supporting and focusing those associations that have chapters or whatever you call them. We have been in partnership with Billhighway for 5 years. Count them, 5 years. 2017 was our first in-person conference. Super cool. Y'all know a little bit about us. If you're kind of new to here, let me just go ahead and mention real quickly that Billhighway is what I call your chapter management solution. It's how you can basically help your chapter leaders with some administrative burden, but more importantly, get a really robust data sharing that allows the entire system, if you will, to make the right decisions. And Mariner, well, I like to just say that we're here to help you create the greatest possible value for members and volunteers. And we do that largely through, tap me if you're interested in knowing. We like to provide stuff that you all need. So speaking of this idea of 2017 being our first in person, we've come a long way, and we're going to be in person again, hoping that I will be able to chance to see some of you in person. We're going to start with Chicago. We're going to be there on October 11th, and then we're going to head down to DC for October 13th. I'm super excited. We now have the information up. The registration is open. I'm going to tell you to act a little fast. And I have to tell you that because in order for, because of coming out of the pandemic and many other things, rather than having a one collective gathering, we decided to do 2 smaller events. And so we have a very limited supply of seats. I believe it's 60 at both locations. We're not going to be able to go beyond that. So if this is something you'd like to do, please, 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 please. Oh, Tracy's already attending Chicago. I love it. But please, please, please register. Oh, did we mention use leverage chapters and save $20? Because this is what we're trying to do. We're really trying to make a community. We're not trying to blow your budget. So, and moving right along in terms of things that you can do that don't blow your budget, I've got 20 ideas here for you, 20 ideas here for you to actually do things for your chapters, many of which do not have a big price tag. So we're going to stay with this theme of how do we leverage the community, leverage each other, and in fact, leverage the resources we have to keep moving. So this is how we're going to do today, because I'm done giving you all the preamble stuff. What we're going to do is we've got these 20 items. We're going to bucket them in 4 areas. The bucket areas are going to be things you can do right now, things that take a little bit more time, things that while they take a little bit more time or take a little bit of dollars, they have a lasting impact. And then finally, the last section is all about you. It's really, how do you get some things done? What are some quick ideas for what you can do for that? So who's with me? Who is in? Give me a quick shout out in the chat if you are ready, if you are strapped in and ready to go. Let's see. Yep. Look at this. Awesome. Excellent. All right. As someone just said, you're ready to rock. Let's start with the first bucket, things you can do right now. Change begins sometimes in very small steps. And then those steps just keep moving you in the right direction. So the first one I'm going to suggest is let's get beyond the checklist. Let's begin to say, okay, well, how do we really make a difference here? So what I'm talking about here is, and instead of your focus being on checklist, how can you shift a little bit and make sure that what we're actually doing is focusing on outcomes? That can be translated into how you are doing your chapter awards. It can be translated in how you communicate. What's your latest email messages going out to chapter leaders? Are you celebrating the outcomes? I just saw one come across my desk from Michelle at camp, in which the headline is, collectively, we did I think it was 380, but don't quote me, 380 events last year. Awesome. Let's keep moving. That's the kind of message that is focused on outcomes. It's not focused on checklist. Number 2, give your chapters tools to alleviate the administrative burden. Now, let me help you out here. I'm not talking about big investments in this particular one. I'm talking about the small things that'll make a difference. Okay, Powtoon, right? How do you make quick videos that answer questions on the spot so that you're not picking up and talking as much? But when your volunteers are looking to do something at 9 o'clock at night, bingo, there they go. So Powtoon, or wait a minute, how about Zapier or Zapier or zapping them, right? So that's a really cool thing to take the gang's painful tasks into macros. So we were talking about, a process. I was just at a leadership conference in New Orleans, and one of the interesting things was we were talking about how cumbersome it was for folks to download the list from the Higher Logic platform. That's happened to be the one they were using. Could be this case, in any case. Download it, get it to a place where they could then check it against their Excel or whatever and be able to quickly and easily do this. Guess what? You can create a Zap for that. And that's what the organization is going to do. So these are the kinds of tools that we can use. Now, we've got links to tools, right? But I'd love for you, is there a tool that you're using that you would love to just shout out right now? See, I love this, Linda. That is exactly what I'm talking about, is you're using Google Forms that make things easier this year. That is great. Of course, we've got Loom and we've got Canva. Betty, in chat, tell us a little bit about how you're using Loom. All right. Number 3, add micro and ad hoc roles to your volunteer plan. So this is what I want to, there's two ways that I want you to look at this. Most importantly, I want you to really help your chapters, your components, understand and embrace micro or ad hoc roles. I want you, instead of doing just this, here's the list of all the committees and all the officers, I want you to give them a list of micro and ad hoc. I want you to maybe on your checklist say, how many of these did you have and how many did you fill? I want you to begin to shine the light on this. Here's a quick point that maybe you can share with your own chapter leaders. I was at a chapter leader session. I was doing a session on this for a group of people, and we were sitting in this big room, and someone said, well, I just don't know where to get started. And someone else said, well, wait a minute. I think what I'm going to do, I'm just going to ask my overwhelmed committee chair to list the tasks they're not going to get to for whatever reason. And those are going to be the jobs I'm going to go out and tap some people on the shoulders with. Bingo. Teach your chapter leaders how to do this. Take these ideas and give them to them. But I also want to share with you that you can model this. And the reason why we have this is something that you can do for them is I want you to begin to think, if you're going to put together a new resource, can you model it by tapping in and saying, hey, I need 4 or 5 ad hoc volunteers from our chapters to look at this. It's going to take this many hours, and then get it done. Can you model that you're putting out, say, for example, a poll and you want to test it? Can you say, I need a couple of micro volunteer officers to do this? Can you help them by actually modeling it? All right. 4, elevate your volunteer appreciation program. So I got to share this with you. It's a cool idea I picked up from a chapter leader workshop. So this was back early in the year, and we were still in person, and we were bringing all these people in. And I said, well, what are we going to do to thank these leaders for giving us this big block of time? And the staff person said, not a problem. I am sending them snack magic. Snack magic. It is a build your own box of snacks. And they get to try new things. And basically, it's a link that you send to your chapter leaders. They fill it in. They can buy more than whatever you've priced it as. And it gives them an opportunity to really kind of get a little treat that you're asking them. But here's another one that I picked up about a month ago. Love this one. They've decided to give their key volunteers at the chapter level a free subscription to their online learning portal. So they have something, they have a subscription service based like a LinkedIn that they offer their members. It's a big professional development link. Actually, ASAE has something very similar, right? And the really neat thing is that they're saying, okay, if you're a volunteer leader, your time is so valuable. We're going to go ahead and just give you some extra things that you can do that are no cost. I just thought it was great because you get a raving fan too, by the way. So tell marketing, they're going to get a raving fan for this education portal. Okay, Snack Magic, a free subscription month, maybe more than month to your online library. In any case, let's go the next level. In chat, let me ask this question. How are you going to appreciate your volunteers next year? Let's share a few things right here as we move on to the next thing. How are you going to appreciate your volunteers next year? Maybe it was something you did this year that was a smash up. Maybe there is something new that you're thinking about. All right. Communicate. We had 3 awesome pros talk about this on a webinar. So we've got the we've got the link there. I just want to give you one option, one idea that came out. I was talking with a group of chapter leaders in another particular event, and on the particular event, we were talking about communications, and it was a kind of a tight conversation. Well, we don't get enough communication. We don't know what we're doing. Well, you don't tell us. They're going back around and back around, and the poor staff is sitting there and they're talking. They're thinking about, and they called me over at the break and they said, Peggy, we do this, we do this, we do this, we do this. I said, well, great, because apparently the people in this room don't know about those. They go, yeah, but how many times can we tell them? And I said, don't tell them, show them. So what they're going to be doing is a set of webinars, which are going to be simply on talking to HQ, how do you make it happen? And they're going to actually show folks all the communication options that are available for chapter leaders and get them to log in and do it. I think that is brilliant. So granted, it hasn't happened yet, but that's an idea I think we could steal. Don't you agree? All right. Member spotlights. Yes. And I love that for the volunteers. I mean, I just think when you shout out and you show somebody volunteering and you give them appreciation, it also has the next person wants to be appreciated like that. So actually beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, Rachel, I tell you what, the quickest thing I do is if you put your cursor next to the note and you scroll it and you do cut, paste, and drop it in. That's going to be the fastest way for just real quick notices. You will get the chat. We always send the chat afterwards, but for those of you that want to get it right now, go ahead and just do a quick, hover over it and copy and then cut and paste. Here's the interesting thing about that. You can do multiple items at the same time. So let's just say Rachel said something and Michelle pulled in, which she did, and then Ann pulled in right after that. You could highlight next to Michelle's name, drag it down to the end of the word across in Ann's, copy it, and throw it in your document. Hope that helps. Anyway, yes, when I think appreciation lunches, ask me anything sessions, these are great ideas. Keep them coming. All right. Things that take more time. So most of those things we just talked about are one and dones. You can get it together. It takes a little bit of time, but you can get it together. You can find the Powtoon link and send it to folks. You can find out which chapter is using a tool. You can grab that and you can share it out. Lots of different things you can do. Some things are just worth you baking into your schedule as a more detailed task. So let's talk about a couple of these things. So number 6 brings us to helping chapters embrace change. Now we did a webinar on this, and I think there's some really good ways of doing it. The core element that we talked about is understanding your change readiness quotient in your chapters or components. Sometimes we just want to dash in and have our members make a change. We're not always focused on what's their readiness. I just did a session a bit ago where after we did a pre-poll, we found out what some of their areas of miss were, right? Like what didn't they know? And so we started off the session with a combination of trends stats from the association world, as well as from their own industry. So basically what we were doing was saying, you know what, let's just bake a little bit of education in a way that really helps you kind of begin to see the world from a different place. I'm gonna just hands down, give a call to Christine Metter. If you're getting ready to bring in some big change, Christine Metter does a really cool short webinar on foresight drivers, the value of it, how to go about using it. I'm sorry, I always interrupt myself. Let me finish my thing. I saw Heather's question. The webinar, excuse me, I interrupted myself. Let me go back. Christine Metter does this incredible webinar in which she helps folks look into the future. And she can talk to chapter leaders. So I really like how she presents the foresight drivers as big opportunities. Yes, so thank you, Liesl, for answering Heather. This is a community. Don't we just love this community? Because I love how we just jump in and help each other. So Christine Metter, M-E-T-T-E-R, Christine with a K. She was actually helped us do a webinar on volunteer learning journeys. You can certainly reach out to her. Okay, so awesome. If you're going to help chapters embrace change, the main thing would take away was begin to do professional development to get them to see outside their own blinders. Now, I want you to make sure that you've got the right data. I think that this is really tough because we don't always have shared data with our people in the field, and it's the missing data points that we talked about in the chapter benchmarking study that really is tripping us up. So you might say, well, what can I do? Well, Mariner is just wrapping up 2 different data projects for 2 different organizations. And so this is something I think you could do. Maybe you can get someone in your organization to do, but basically you do a pilot project in which you ask as many chapters as can to give you their data, then do an analysis. And what you do with that data analysis is you go back to those groups and you say, here's the data you were able to provide. Here's another way of looking at this data. So what I'm having you do is begin to teach the components, the leaders, what questions to ask the data may be able to yield them. Not all the time can they get it, but now you can then begin to train them to how do I maybe get that data. This may, and I've seen this happen, turn to a chapter saying, well, how do you just get that for us? And it opens the door for a more robust conversation. We're coming in through a different door, but I'm just suggesting that if we teach chapters to understand their data and what's important, then they will begin to come to you with data that allows us to shift this conversation about chapter behavior. But bottom line, one of the things that we're going to talk about in our 2 workshops coming up in October is we're going to show one association's journey in creating an interactive dashboard that really helped them get chapters to share some data. So I'm just going to suggest that we spend so much time chasing down chapter reports of how many events did you have and what was your average registration number, and that doesn't tell us what we need. So maybe stop asking them to give the information that's really not helpful and begin to teach them how to give the information that is. But maybe it's a service that you provide. The reason why these 2 organizations had Mariner be it was because we were the hub, we were the independent party in terms of looking at data and making sure that no one had eyes on it. 8, there was a dynamic conversation on the component relations section page, isn't that terrible? Higher logic community. I knew I could do that. And then there was a follow-up idea swap on this, but how do we modernize chapters versus the fixing the chapters? Now, this does take more time. This will have a greater impact. I'm going to suggest that how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So there is a link in here that allows you to begin to look at modernizing your chapters versus fixing them. But I'm going to suggest the important reframing here is the word modernizing. And if you can maybe go out and say to folks, if we could modernize some of our systems or processes, what would that look like? It's going to be sometimes the incremental changes, but it's also you having put out there, we want to modernize how we're doing things, help us make these decisions. So it could turn out that what you do is you have an open discussion on your chapter leader page, or maybe you have a poll that goes out periodically. Oh my gosh, David, I just saw that. Okay, liver pate, I like that. But seriously, sometimes it's about the little things and the changing the conversation that allows us. But read that blog post for a little bit more on this. And we are going to be doing some more conversation around this the beginning of next year. Mariner is going to be connecting some folks that have raised their hand, and we're still accepting additional people who want to have kind of a peer-to-peer group that's going to talk about how do we handle some of this. Okay, number 9. Find those bright spots. I don't have to say too much about this because quite frankly, we did an amazing session, an amazing webinar. I'm just going to say that. Charlotte, who has, she's moved on to some other exciting things, but her voice, her ideas, her sessions that she did in conjunction with Sarah are great. I don't want you just to go that. But I have to tell you that when one of the sessions this year, I always ask for those of you who haven't had a chance to see how I work. I always ask for, or frequently ask for a poll or a sense of ask the chapters what they're really proud of, right? That's one of the questions. And then what I will do is I'll take some of those in a session. I'll take them. Well, I had a session. One of the things we did was one of the groups had a rocking women's group, right? And so part of the session was, we said, how can I replicate that? It was how can I replicate that work session? This is something you could do at your next leadership conference. It's not show and tell that this person gets up and says, oh, this is how I did it. And everybody goes, I don't know. No, it's a, how can I replicate that work session? You could use some of the materials from the Bright Spots handouts to help you build that kind of a session, or just tap me. 10, develop a self-assessment. I am super excited about what we're going to be talking about at the in-person, because part of what this particular association did was take something that was very similar to a self-assessment, just reshaped it. Another group that's done some really great work on this is AGC. So definitely tap the staff over there for that. But the point here is, you, instead of you saying, you didn't do this, you missed here, look at your bad score, you are helping a chapter do a self-assessment and then peer over and see how everybody else is doing and then begin to talk about it. It's really a great way of changing it. So I saw someone said, you know, we have minimum chapter standards. We intervene when they fall near or below. And so, and a lot of us have minimum chapter standards. My question is, are we now saying, you know, here's what we have found historically are the baseline for chapters. Rate yourself. I mean, I'm talking about, you can just give them that and we can use that information, or can you, in a way that it brings them into the conversation, help them? Because one of the struggles we have is, if we come in to the conversation and we come into the conversation when they are near failure, oh, it's such a different conversation. It is such a, it's a painful conversation, and sometimes doesn't go anywhere. Now, speaking of which, I want to ask a question, because we had somebody reach out to us to ask this question. They're looking to more formalize their process to helping chapters either raise their hands saying we're at a catastrophic place, right? Or being able to have some kind of a conversation generator that helps the organization see this. So that's a convoluted way of me saying it, but does anybody have a form that chapters fill out to say, I need help? Does anybody have any kind of a formal process or system if you identify somebody? So I know, for example, David mentioned we intervene when they fall near or below. What's your process for that? Is it written down? Is it something that you can share? So we've got a person who's really asked this question, and I would really, really love if you've got something that you can share. Again, the question is there either an intake form like, oh my gosh, I'm having a problem, here's my form, give me a call? Or is there a process that you follow when you begin to sense or see that somebody's got a problem? So please, 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 please. Okay, so Abigail, you say you write that, you have that in your chapter visit in the biennial report. If you could share that, that would be awesome. Anyway, folks, please, if you've got anything that you can share is great. I know Betty says she's got a STAR chapter assessment. Let's go ahead. If you're willing to share that, let's go ahead and do that. And Liesl says they can grab time right on my calendar, schedule a call. Please, in chat, are you using Calendly? Are you using Doodle Calendar? What are you doing, and how do you get people to know that that's there? Let's see. Yes, I love Chris. You were absolutely right. Your organizational capacity assessment is great. I don't know if that's something that you can share. That would be awesome. By the way, you see these people, if you would love to learn more about it, I bet if you DM Chris, she'll say, sure, let's find a way to talk. I've just put Chris out there. Sorry about that. I know that Liesl will probably do that because she's done it for some other folks as well, and she's answered my questions too. Calendly. I love that. So Tandy says, when we notice that activity has stopped and the chapter there's a no-show, we give the leader a call. So if you've written down any of these processes, please share and we will pass that along to this individual. But I think also more importantly, we'll take all this stuff and put it into a blog post and share it back. So lots of really, really good things. Okay, so Catherine says she works hard to keep in contact frequently with chapters to head off any issues. So, I love these stories. What I'd love to do is if you put a little bit more content around it, either in chat or just send me a message, maybe we'll collect some of these. How do you do this so that we can make that connection? Thanks all. Keep moving. This is a big conversation. If you're going to do a self-assessment, if you're going to have the annual report, if you're going to do these other things, how are we using them that makes a difference? How are we using them that makes a difference? Okay, under the category of things that have a lasting impact. Okay, things that have a lasting impact are anything that I believe is just it's gonna give you a power punch over time. You might have to do a little bit more conversation to get it going. You might find it a little difficult to be able to maybe even compel it. So you got to compel getting it going. And so sometimes you need to show to predict what you think is going to be the impact to be able to get some agreement on these things. So thank you, Tandy Joe, for sharing that link. A large part of what you're going to see in this section is talking about volunteer training, because we cannot do for everyone. You know that saying that it's better to teach a person to fish. That's what we're trying to do here in things that have a lasting impact. Now, we're going to say, the words I'm going to use are going to be help your volunteer, help your leader, help your da here. But I also want you to substitute the word volunteer for staff. In some cases, it's help your membership staff if you're not directly in the membership department, or help your education staff if you're not directly in the education, to come along for the journey or the ride so that they become partners for you over the long time. But let's get started. Number 11 is rethink your volunteer training program. Now, we've written quite a bit about it. We've done some really good sessions on this. I want to really, though, highlight for you the toolkit that Christine Metter and I pulled together. And I think I saw Anne on the phone on the webinar today. She was one of our advisory group of association pros, where we did a deep dive on how do we change up the way we're approaching volunteerism. And what we did was we developed from these conversations a toolkit that talks about a volunteer matrix, a toolkit that talks about a volunteer pathway. And then we said, how can you use that in the context of a volunteer learning journey? So please, that toolkit it's a freebie for all of you, and it's part of those links. I'd love to have you go ahead and I'd love to get some feedback, because one of the things that Mariner does is we bring together small cohorts of folks to work through some questions that we all collectively have. So please give us some additional information on this. I also want to say to you that the ASAE Foundation volunteer models research is going to be released, hopefully, this fall. I say hopefully, we're in final review, so it should be released. It's coming out from the foundation. I'm going to give you just a little insider tip here. What we found was the volunteers saying that being equipped to do the job increases their satisfaction. And we heard the staff in the staff portion of this very clearly say that volunteer training, where they've been able to apply it, have made a difference. Now, if you go to the chapter leaders survey results from the chapter benchmarking study, you hear the same thing. You hear the same thing. So I'm just going to suggest that it's really important that we begin to say, how can we do this differently? And there are some really good questions in that toolkit. 12 is provide guidelines rather than deadlines. And this is my way of saying, some of it's a language shift. You want to build a better relationship, right? You want to build a better relationship with your leaders, incoming and past leaders and current leaders over time. Maybe this is the one mantra that you can take away and begin to build that trust. And what this really comes down to is that it's not that you're not giving deadlines, but the way you're going to talk about the deadlines even is, hey, here are 5 tips on completing the report by October 30th, right? Here are 5 tips. Or what do you need to get 3 events in by the end of the year? So instead of saying you have to have 3 events by the end of the year and I need you to report to them this way, you're saying, what do you need? Or who's doing this kind of event? Maybe this event would work for other folks. So you're constantly talking about the work that has to be done, but you're talking about it from the perspective of how do we get it done, right? I think that a huge part of this is we talked about training, is your portal. It's your robust portal that is accessible 24/7. It's got to be the collaboration of volunteers and staff. It's got to be about refreshing content. It's got to be about shifting focus to how do we get stuff done rather than we don't. So here's a great way of doing this. Maybe not a great way, but here's a really robust way of doing this. I'm going to suggest that if you get an ad hoc role, you tap into a couple of your more seasoned or seniored or outgoing chapter leaders or component leaders, and you say, all right, you just have a real quick confab. What was it that you wanted that you couldn't find? Okay, how did you search for it? So you just have a good conversation. That's one group. Maybe you bring them back and you say, all right, I want you to find these 3 items on the portal that we have. Find these 3 items and then tell me how you found them. Now, that's a great way to figure out, how do your volunteers think? How do they approach the conversation? Then with that feedback, you can reorganize maybe a portal into a way that matches how they think. When we did this a number of years ago for one organization, I started by saying to the staff, write down all the questions that you consistently get from your chapter leaders. Write down every question that you get. Wrote down all these questions. I said, great, we are going to redesign your portal based on the questions. And in fact, it was driven by questions. So you don't look for this long list of Instead, you look for the question. The most common question we get is X. Here it is. This is the way Google works, right? This is the way a really robust search mechanism works. So let's apply it to your own. All right. Coach volunteer leaders rather than lecture. This is a little bit of a follow-up, but we also want you to focus on what is a coaching mindset. We did a really a very popular session webinar on this. We did a session for our virtual CEX, and Lori Rubin and I did a follow-up set of webinars. Happy to continue to bring those if that would be valuable. But what I want you to do is to put on your coaching hat and create your list of questions that really helps your volunteers navigate scenarios. I'm talking about helping them discover their strengths as well as their weaknesses, and then find their paths using resources. Every time someone says, well, I don't know how to do this, and then you do it for them, or I don't know how to do this, and you give them the resource, you haven't, it goes back to that teach a person to fish, right? So I want you to put that coaching mindset on. One of the things I'm going to suggest, if you haven't done this, is consider getting, a couple of sessions, say with Lori Rubin, have her work with you on developing your coaching mindset. She does some of those one-on-ones and a couple of them. Maybe you put your team together and you say, we're going to go through a couple of coaching classes. This will pay off in dividends down the road. Now, here's a question, and go ahead, light up oh my goodness, light up the chat on this. I'm collaborating with a couple of folks. We're thinking about, would a in-person or a virtual workshop on how to be an incredible facilitator be useful to you as a CRP? In other words, how do I bring the best of facilitation to a chapter board meeting, to a chapter leader conference, to a chapter scenario that they need a little bit of help on, to my own internal team? So let me know. Oh, I see some yeses already. So I'm meeting with this cohort next week. We're going to have a conversation, and I just wanted to know if this was something that would be of interest and value. I personally think that between a coaching hat and a facilitator hat, well, I don't know. I think we could start dancing, right? Okay, moving right along. Keep those yeses going in. If it's okay to you, I might reach out and ask you what you'd want to see in it. So keep those coming up and let me know. Excellent. Make your leadership volunteer training more accessible. I'm talking about using the Powtoon. I'm talking about multi-channel. I'm talking about having a portal. I'm talking about having access to quick webinars. I'm talking about having a Calendly link so that people can make those connections. I'm talking about baking in really good volunteer training into your LMS. I'm talking about all those things. And I'm also talking about not making it a one-up, and don't silo your leadership conference from your town hall meetings, from your monthly calls. Don't create those silos, because those silos are going to hold you back. I want you instead to say, okay, how do I make these connections? How do I pull these connections together? It's self-serving for me to say this, but I help associations do that. And I'm happy to answer questions. You don't have to hire me. You can just actually call me up and say, but how do I do that? What am I going to do? So let's talk, because I think this is going to be a game changer for you. One other quick thing on this. I was talking to a CRP. This must have been probably 6 months ago. And one of the things that they did was they went out and one of the questions they asked on their annual survey was something to the effect of, what was your go-to resource? And what was your favorite training? So what they were doing was, looking for recall, right? So if I still remember it, it's going to obviously have been something that was important that I had access to, but also then they were able to say, okay, they were able to look at the format of the favorite things. They were able to look at the kinds of the contents and the tools of those favorite things. And then they also reached out and just talked to a couple of people about how accessible it was. Sometimes it's those little questions that just really give us a light bulb moment, right? All right, 15, ask, don't tell. We did a series on truths about volunteering and are you being voluntold? Two interesting links there. At the end of the day, we have volunteers that just don't step up to the plate. Part of it, they don't step up to the plate is because they were voluntold or because you gave them that job. The classic case I talk about is the budding volunteer who at a chapter level who found out that she had been assigned a duty, and this duty was something she did not really like to do, but also wasn't that great at. People assumed, because in this particular association, that everybody had great writing skills and all were very interested in writing blog posts and e-letter articles. And she said, well, it's like, she told me when I asked her why she hadn't made a meeting, well, for 3 times now, you keep giving me tasks I don't want to do or I can't do. And I said, giving you tasks? I said, which tasks did we give you? And she recited them. And I said, well, which tasks would you like to do? And then she told me, long story short, we turned her around. We got to teach our groups to do that. We have to give them examples of voluntold is not good. I was at a chapter leader conference and someone said, I asked folks, why are you president? Why are you here? And someone says, I was voluntold to be here. And I said, well, then I give you the right to go get coffee and not worry about this. And the person said, what? Not to mention the staff person thinking I was being a little flip. And I said, well, one of the worst things I can do to you is tell you to do something as opposed to ask you. And that person then said, well, actually, I was voluntold. I don't think I mind it right now. I said, okay, great, then sit here and and learn a little bit more. I'm rambling a little bit there, but what I'm trying to let you know is that too often we do this ourselves as well. We assume that if this person was a past president, they can now be an RVP. And we sell it without actually giving them the hint of what it is. great. All right. I like to, in our 10 minutes that we have left on this, technically we have 15 minutes left completely, but I always like to give a moment for us to have some openings. So I want to give you just a couple of final thoughts on things to help you get it done. I really feel that one of the things that we don't do as association staff is we don't equip ourselves as best we can to the jobs that we have. And as CRPs, that job is working with volunteers on an ongoing and regular basis. And so I want to give you just some thoughts about maybe what you could do to better equip yourself. Now, these are going to be maybe less, some of them are going to be less specific and more just framing a little bit. But I think that sometimes we have to invest in ourselves. Am I right? And let me ask this question to the chat. What's the last thing you did to invest in yourself? Not to answer a volunteer, but to invest in yourself. What's the last thing you did to invest in yourself? Now, while you're answering that question, I took a week off. I love it. Attended the conference. Yes. Yes. Good job, Barbara. Love to hear that. I will tell you that we at Mariner, we closed our doors for 30 days. That's right. We took the month of August off. Now we're celebrating 20 years. So that was one of our excuses. But I think that, are you, Belinda, are you at the Texas the conference now? I think it's going on or it just finished. I love that. And I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So here's what, oh, Carrie, love it. Working with a life coach. I want us to celebrate that this idea of really investing in ourselves. We are best for our volunteers when we show up at our best, and we can't show up at our best unless we invest in ourselves. All right. So here's a couple of thoughts by this. I'm loving this. Anne's she took the CAE exam and she's continued to renew. I love this. Keep going. Carrie. Woo, 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 woo. All right. Number 16 is recognize and set out to conquer those 3 deserts. I want you to, if you haven't already, I want you to go back to that section of the chapter benchmarking report. I want you to read those. I'm going to suggest to you that I have 2 examples of how some organizations have really done this. One took a section from the report to their team and they say, what can we do about this? It was like, I'm not going to try to solve it today, but let's have a conversation. Let's acknowledge that it's here, the elephant in the room, and let's begin to understand it. Another one took each one of those and took it to the appropriate department. Took it to IT for the one and said, this is my life. How do you feel about this, right? And a third group, very wonderfully happened to reach out and asked if Mariner could have somebody just be a resource for their board and just show up at a board meeting and lead a conversation about some of the things that are coming down the pike for chapters. It was a very simple session. There are association pros out there that could carry the water to a conversation with a board or a chapter counselor, whatever. You don't have to hire a consultant to come in and do a whole project thing with you. Just take this data and take it out to your volunteers. So I kind of love those things. I just want you to think about, you don't have to do something yet completely today, but maybe just go ahead and see if there are ways for you to just generate the conversation. In other words, let me just go back, and I'm going to see one more thing in just a second. Don't keep this to yourself. That's what I'm really saying. Don't keep this to yourself. All right. Make the case for chapters. Does your CEO question why chapters, or maybe just doesn't even talk to you? Maybe you just can't even get in a room for this. Let me tell you that this is tough, but you're going to have to make the case for chapters. Working with, I think Michelle won't mind me saying this, I'm working with Camp. We're just about finished the project, and the final report is in some ways part of making the case for chapters. It's making the case for some things around chapters. But the same point is that the idea is that we've been on this journey. We've looked at the data. We've talked to volunteer leaders. We've had some great calls with their volunteer leaders. It's really helping us go to the exec and potentially to the board and say, here's the lay of the land. I'm going to suggest that a smaller step, pull out your strat plan, pull out the operational plan for 2023, circle everything related to membership and member value. Then figure out how your program supports that goal. Then go to the folks and say, look at this. I am here to help you support this. But in order for me to do that, I need X and Y, and you need Y, and you need O and P, and we need to get an R and an S in the room. Okay. Oh my gosh. And of course, Lakeisha would do that. That is awesome. That is totally, totally awesome. I love to hear that. New CEOs sometimes are a breath of fresh air. So anyway, make that case, create the story. Do check through, by the way, on that particular webinar. We gave you a whole way of creating stories for your chapters, for your chapter program. 18, this is a tough one. I feel like we got to put it in here, get it in writing. There is a power to an effective affiliation agreement. It's an amazing, powerful tool that is so underappreciated. Let me put it to you that way. I think it's underappreciated because we have looked at it as a legal document. But make it a principles of affiliation. What it's going to do is it's going to define the roles, define the scope, create the relationship, set the expectations, and define benefits on both sides. Now, some organizations, it's going to be a more complex document. I'm going to ask you to maybe back off just a little bit. The idea here is what needs to be in here versus what's nice to include. So, okay, go back to all of the basic principles about what is an effective bylaw, right? Bylaws. And what we want to do with the affiliation agreement is we want to do what's the minimum that we need to do in order to keep this relationship moving on the right path. What's that LOA, right? I don't want you to put the checklists in there, and I don't want you to put a lot of details that need to have flexibility and changing, right? So, to say that they have to have a website of X, no. You lift it up a little bit more. Does this mean it gets a little bit more gray? Of course. But you see, if you lift it up a little bit, then you can create guidelines and documents that are updated more everly. I want to be an evergreen document, but I want you to do two other things, which I think are too often underappreciated in this. I want you to do an annual signing, because if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. Now, I don't mean you have to go out and you need to sign this, but have some fun around it. Go, hey, it's a new year. Here's our affiliations agreement. Do you know about this? I get that we have annual reports and stuff. I'm talking about letting them know that we're a partnership. Shake those hands, right? The other thing is I want you to think about this in terms of when you're onboarding new leaders. How do you tell them about this and talk about it? The last thing I want you to do is I want you to take stuff out of it. I sort of alluded to this, but I want to highlight this. I want you to take stuff out of it. Now, I'm not your lawyer. Your lawyer may disagree, but for the most part, take those legal docs around IP, brand usage and those things, and take them out of this. Allow this to be a principles of affiliation. Allow this to be, we are rowing in this direction and we all agree. I love it. Thank you, Chris. She said, develop guiding principles of partnership. Yes, I mean, that's what I'm talking about exactly. It's getting us on the same page. It's also keeping the fact that we're a partnership up in front. 19, download the 2022 chapter performance and benchmarking report. I've mentioned this a couple of times. Let me just give a big shout out to Shelly at GPA. I don't know if she's on this call or not. Shelly did an amazing thing, and she's very, very kind to share it with me. She took this report and she did a highlights document to share with her chapter leaders. She also, of course, shared it with staff. But I love the fact that she said, look, isn't this interesting? And this opens up some questions. Well, it has opened up some questions. She's going to be using it in a chapter task force as they look at their own, what's their annual benchmarks, annual reports, and all that kind of stuff. It's going to tie into a shift into their awards program. I totally love this. Shelley, big shout out in doing that, going ahead and doing that. Then the other thing is share. I know that more than one association came to me and said they shared it with their CEOs. I had a great call with the CEO about this, so it was excellent. All right, invest in a multi-chapter management program. All right, this is a shameless plug for Billhighway, but I got to tell you, this is not going to work for everybody, possibly, but at least explore it and understand that robust technology tools can make a huge difference. And so I want you to go ahead and really take a look at that. All right, those are our 20 ideas. Super excited. I don't know if you noticed, but the reason why there is 20 is because, first of all, Mariner's 20. So we wanted to give you something that we've learned or picked up basically throughout our 20 years. But also 20 is divisible by 5. Which of course is how long we've been working with Billhighway. So all of this kind of works together, but there's a bonus. I had to throw this one in. We launched last year as we were coming up on our 20th waypoint. By the way, waypoint is a reference point that you use to know where you are and where you're going. And I don't know how many of you've noticed, but we're about navigating, and we're about sailing, and that's not us sailing, but I do feel sometimes like sailing would be a great place for us. In any case, if you subscribe to Waypoint, all you're going to get once a month is a single topic idea with some interesting ways that you can bring it to your chapters or your staff. And it also just is a really good way to stay in loop on the CEX community and allow you to have one-up bonus tips. Great. This has been our exciting, and then I'm going to put this slide up one more time. What else is happening here? We've got a couple of minutes before we close off. What else can somebody say? If we didn't hear something here, you think it'd be really great, throw it into chat for me. I'm going to scroll back up again real quickly to see what people said that they were really interested in doing. Let's see, recruitment, succession planning, how to get our components to interact and collaborate, recruiting volunteers, absolutely. Templating programs, love that one. Recruitment tools, yeah, keep them engaged. Cohesive shared marketing materials, Lauren. I just want you to know that we've got a couple of links and a couple of examples in this list here on tech tools. A couple of associations are doing exactly that. So my connection point is not going to give you the information, but please, if you don't get it, let me know. Succession, onboarding. I love this. Succession and onboarding. Very good. All right. Well, you're going to see some of this stuff popping up. Canva templates for associations. Whoa, Betty. I love that. All right. We are at, let me see, by my watch, I have 2 minutes. Any questions that we can answer for you? Anything else we can do? Sarah, thank you very much. You put the whole article in there. And you've got the Eventbrite links. Here are the things here, just so you know, in case you didn't hear it. Here's your leverage chapters as your save your $20. And, this is, we love being here. We love being with you and for you and about you. Aubrey, that's an interesting question. Does anyone know of a great online feed to create quick questions, information, and sharing for chapter? Aubrey, I'd love to talk with you about that afterwards. Can you shoot me an email or maybe shoot or maybe put your email right in there. Okay. And And it's sign off time. What can I say? Thank you. Once again, our pleasure. As always, stay cool, have some fun, enjoy your pumpkin latte if that's what you like. And we'll see you hopefully in October. We'll definitely see you online in November. Thank you.